Hello, my dears. Today it's time to have an open conversation about why there is always a gap between what we want to achieve and what we're actually doing. Maybe not always, but very often there is some gap between what we say our goals are and what actually we are doing in our daily life. Call it procrastination, lack of motivation. We will name 5 key most common reasons which most people face when discussing about this gap of what we want and what we are doing. After having hundreds of conversations with various women across Europe, I have figured out these 5 most common topics which everyone faces. I will also tell you how these can be addressed. You can also think about this video as why, what, and how about my coaching support, because that's exactly what my clients are coming with to my coaching sessions. So let's start. Do you remember the times when we keep repeating some goals over and over again in our goals notebook, on when we talk with our friends, or when there is the year end and year start, when we talk about new year resolutions? We always come to similar things which we want to change or want to achieve. However, in the middle of the year, or when we do the retrospective of certain period of time, we realize, oh, that again has not happened. So there are 5 core reasons behind or why it's not happening. So that's what I want to address now. So the first one is the definition of the goal itself. So it's very important to be really clear on what I want to have and why. And both what and why are crucial. So they are both very important, because you should really have the intrinsic motivation to achieve something, and you need to understand why, what difference will this achievement make in our life. So let's say if I want to start regular sports, I really need to be clear on what does it mean, first of all. So be specific. So in my case, I want to go to the gym 3 times per week, and what it will make in my life different. In my case, it will give me more energy to execute toward my business goals or career goals, and it will also add more stability and routine around my week, as well as give me more motivation to go forward to my other goals, because I will believe in myself that if I manage to get the sports routine done, then I can do anything else. So that was just an example, but it's super important, first of all, to be clear on what I want and why. And that's very often what some clients come to me with when we're talking about the career goals. When there is a question about, okay, I want to do something different, however, I don't know what exactly. I don't know if I want to start my own business, or I want to go further in the career ladder, or maybe I actually want to change the field or the industry or whatever, you name it. So there is like something out there that you want to change, however, you are really not clear on what needs to be changed and why. So that's the first common reason why we're not moving forward as we want to. Second reason is motivation. So it's connected to the first one, but we need to face it that the motivation is fluctuating from day to day, from week to week, from hour to an hour. That's totally normal. However, we as an adult, we need to be able to manage own motivation, own energy peaks and lows, and that's something which we also work in coaching in order how can I manage my how can I work together with my body, with my brain, with my daily routine, so that I can set up workable routine and workable habits and environment which supports my movement in sustainable motivation path regularly towards what I want. So the motivation was second point. Third point is very big and often painful one. It's about confidence, fears, doubts, all this around inner belief that I will make it. That's something really powerful, which can be a showrunner and make us move super fast towards our goals, or it can be a big stopper and huge blocker if we do not address it properly. And that's maybe one of the most common questions which come for coaching, because you probably know that unfortunately women are more likely to face these questions than men, and that's totally normal. However, we can very practically and productively and efficiently address all of this in individual work. We just need to understand what are the roots, or maybe sometimes if we're not talking about the therapy work, but coaching itself, we do not really need to dig deep to understand where it comes from. We just need to understand what is it about, and then learn and even formulate own approach of how I deal with my confidence, fears, doubts, and then basically learn to move next to it towards my goal. So that's the goal. That's the ultimate goal. We are all people. We will, independently from our life stage, from our age, from our achievements, we all will face the fears, the doubts, concerns, and all this interesting stuff. However, we really need to be able to work around them and come up with own routine, own tools which work for you exactly in your specific case, and they may also change from time to time, and that's what we work in coaching as well. So that was the third blocker, right? The confidence topics. And fourth is, I know the what and why. I know the as is, however, I'm not really clear on what I need to do to get there. So what are the real actions which will take me to the desired goal? And that's something which is a gray zone between consulting, mentoring, and coaching, because in the traditional understanding of coaching, I'm not supposed to give you any advice. However, based on my hands-on approach to how I work with my clients, that's also what we come up together with. What would be my roadmap, right? And there are multiple steps of how this can be done. We can reach out to all the people around us. We can leverage networking. We can research. We can do small test and learn experiments, and also look for opportunities around us. So there are plenty of different methods of how we can figure out what the roadmap should be. However, this clarity on the how, on what will take me to the desired state, so this knowledge and understanding of what actually are the actions which will take me to the B state, is something which we also address in coaching. At least the methods of how to clarify this path. And ultimately, also maybe one of the most common and very interesting one, when we know everything what needs to be done. Everything has been studied from back and forth. Everything has been trained and analyzed from different angles. And you perfectly know what needs to be done. However, you are still not doing it. And that's exactly where individual coaching is helpful. And there might be different reasons behind it. It can be that there is fear of success. It can be just simple procrastination, time management. It can be also again self-confidence. It can be plenty of stuff. However, again, it's super important that this goal is in your focus, and you constantly are looking for opportunities of how this can be done. And that's exactly the regular long-term coaching is the key solution. And I'm myself working with my coach regularly, and this video is one of the of the results of my individual coaching work, because I'm not sure if I would be doing my social media content regularly or at all if I would not be sustainably focusing on my goals in my coaching work, in my own coaching work with my own coach. Anyways, so these were the 5 most common traps which keep us from moving forward to the goals. And as I said, I also want to explain more how exactly coaching works by addressing these traps, because I keep getting the questions of how it's actually working, and yeah, so what is it really about, how it looks in practical, clear steps, one by one. So what is important to understand is that coaching is very much goal focused. So you can think about a coach as your partner in achieving your own goals. So we partner up. We have a shared goal which is codified, or maybe you already have it and then we just align on what is it. We have shared goal, we have shared path to it, we then develop the shared plan together. And it's important that that's also realistic, clear, super clear, with interim milestones and KPIs, which we also come back to. And then it can be obviously adjusted on the go, but however, it should be really shared and aligned roadmap. And finally, it's relationship. It's another key to success. That's, by the way, research-based outcome, that these 3 components, so shared goal, shared plan, and relationship, were success metrics to proof that coaching is working. And there was also a study, by the way, which was comparing different methods of how of what support can people get for to get to what they want in terms of mentoring, coaching, different therapy methods as well. And the key correlation, the key factor which was really defining whether this method was working for a person or not, was the match between the support person and the client. So this relationship, this match, this trust and connection of 2 people is the success factor. So if you ask me how to choose your coach, that will be my key advice. You just need to look for a person whom you can trust, whom you like, whom you would like to follow. So that would be the key guidance in terms of that. So what defines me as a coach? I would say, based on all my clients' feedback, based on my talent analysis by Gallup, based on all million of tests I have been conducting, based on all of the million reflections and self-work, I have structured my own USPs into 3 key buckets. The first one is my positivity and warmth. That's I have a certificate from Gallup where I have positivity is my top talent out of 34 core talents within the strength assessment. So and all my clients say that my positive energy and I believe that basically hard things can also make fun, right? We do not need to overcomplicate the stuff. We do not need to have to boil the ocean for some stuff which doesn't require necessarily our full attention. Let's just take it easy and have fun on the way. So the positivity and warmth is the first bucket of my USPs, as I said. Second USP is around my depth. So I have intellection and futuristic as my top talents as well. It's super important for me not to be superficial, and I really want to have all the methods and tools I use to be evidence-based and research-proved. So everything I talk about, I really verify in terms of does it really make sense based on the research, based on the studies, based on what I learned so far. So this depth is super important for me because I don't want to be you can do it, go for it, but it should be really something profound and evidence-based. And finally, my third bucket of my USPs is the goal-oriented personality. So achiever and activator, I'm on my top talents as well. So sometimes I must say I struggle also from this talent in my work because especially in my corporate work where I want to just get things to be done instead of discussing them and aligning them and just sitting and just spending time in unnecessary calls and to discuss stuff. I really want things to be outcome-based, solution-oriented, and get things done. So when I was talking about the shared goals, the shared plan earlier in coaching, that's really important for me that we have the action and outcome-oriented focus, because there is no need to be process-oriented when we talk about our own life, right? That's not corporate world where we can just spend time for the sake of salary, and we don't want to waste our precious life for the things which will not bring the result in the end. So result orientation is another USP of mine. So that's about how I work. I think it's also worth mentioning about how the coaching really works in practical terms. So as I said, it's about shared goals. So we always know where we are moving towards. And then based on that shared goal, we define a focus for each session. So what needs to be solved today to ensure you're moving more productively and faster towards the shared goal. We define the focus for the session, and then each session ends with the insights and key takeaways. And I also then ask you to formulate the focus or commitment for the week. So you take something for the next week. I mean, that's assuming we are working in a weekly routine once per week. Then that's the most common format. However, we can also adjust it based on your urgency of the goal or your schedule. Sometimes I work bi-weekly. Sometimes I work a few times per week. So that depends. However, I basically at the end of each session, I would ask you to define the what you want to take as a focus until our next session. That would be your homework. And then the next what worked well, what needs to be revised maybe in your plans and focus, and based on that we take the next goal of the session, again in the context of our shared goal we are working towards. And that's how we work in chapters, step by step, depending on what is your real bottleneck. As we said earlier, if that's about the maybe fears, confidence, or maybe clarity, or roadmap understanding, depending on that specific pain point, I can also recommend, if you ask me, on what needs to be addressed and what are the tools which we can use, or what can be the focus which require our attention to move forward faster. To give you just practical examples of what the goals could be, so that you can get the feeling, it can start from I want to change my job, or I want to understand whether in which direction to move in terms of my career development. It can be also something very specific, that I want to earn more money and I want to prepare for some negotiations. It can also be social goals, in terms of I want to work on my networking skills. Yeah, so you can move towards self-realization and realizing your full potential. So that could be a goal to fulfill all your talents and strength in your career, let's say. It can be something material in terms of earning money, or getting some project done, or receiving new project as a more challenging assignment. It can also be understanding really whether I want to go self-employed, and I have been also partnering up with some women who were building their own business, and also just starting up their own practice, or have already started and they needed support to be consistent in what they are doing as self-employed, or just building the business and the team. And it can be also some social goals, in terms of I want to expand my network, I want to have more friends, and maybe also I want to become different personality, in terms of I want to be more confident, I want to reduce self-doubt, and I want to have more energy in how I perform, or how I live my life, and so on. So there can be multiple of goals which you are thinking of, and the key here is that we should match in terms of what is interesting for us, and then have a shared goal, shared plan, and good connection with each other, because that's really what matters the most. And along that journey, as soon as we have a clarity on the goal and the methods, and where we're going, and what are the roadmap, as well as the KPIs along the way, there will be always some instability coming up. So life happens, right? You may have a difficult conversation at work, you may have a bad day with your friend, so there can be multiple of situations which will derail you from the goal, and that's why we really need this regular support to clean up our mind. That's exactly one of the reasons I come to my coach regularly, because when we are on our own, in our own head, the same thoughts are just taking up our mind and do not allow us to get moving in terms of actions. We just keep, as soon as we start ruminating the same overthinking, the same thought is taking up our mind, we get distracted. We cannot move clearly, and we cannot execute as we want to. So as soon as we bring these thoughts to the session, we structure them, we understand what is the emotion, what is the fact, how to work with it, how to make this thought into an action, and what is needed to be taken up, what is unnecessary, and how does it connect to our goal which we are working towards. All this cleans up all the mess which we are holding in our head for days or weeks. as soon as this is clarified, you have all the energy to move on. So that's one of the secrets why it's actually working. So I guess that was the key part of what I wanted to discuss with you today. If you are still thinking, oh, I don't want to invest time or money in coaching at the moment, maybe it's not for me, I would just advise you to think how long do you want to postpone your goal, and if you do not change anything today, would you regret it over a certain period of time? Because to be honest, I'm recording this video now because I would love to hear this a few years ago when I didn't know this support system could exist, and I would be happy to realize that this could bring me so much forward faster, so much more efficient, so much more productive to my goal, which I have been sitting on for like years, literally years. I have been struggling myself in my own head, in my own mindset, which was just not moving. And if someone would have told me that you could get this thing done in a few months and not years you have been postponing it, I would pay honestly all money of the world which I could afford to get this done, because that's, again, that we do not want to waste our life for waiting. And believe me, it's not that I want to sell you something. It's really because I'm also looking for people which would match, right, with me and my interest and my passion. I just want to share with you that this possibility exists. And if you are thinking that maybe I don't have time or money for coaching support today, think about not coaching support, but do you have time or money for your goal, for your desire, which you are thinking about every new year or new birthday start, or whatever your milestones of goal revision is. Think about, does your dream deserve this support? That's something which I would focus upon, and I will be very much happy to get to know you and maybe also discuss your personal situation over a quick call if you are interested, and I'm happy to share any more details which you are wondering about how it all works and if it's applicable for you, if I can be of any help. So please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to book a free discovery call. I have a Calendly link in the description of the video. Looking forward to getting to know you, and let's keep in touch in this channel. Thank you for your attention.